Here's a guy that played 4 snaps in the regular season last year, and all of a sudden it's beneath him to be at a mandatory. I didn't say voluntary. We understand what voluntary means. We know what that means. He can choose to be there or not. This was a mandatory minicamp. And what was the reason? I understand if there's an illness in the family. If there's an illness with him, there wasn't. This is why he hasn't won more than what he's won. It's great, and he's historically great. He's transcendently great. But there's a reason why he doesn't win more in the playoffs than what he does. He's standoffish. He's condescending. He's aloof. He's all about Aaron Rodgers. He's never been about the team.
So many people are shy to speak out against Aaron Rodgers. Shannon is not one of them, saying what he believes is right and that missing mandatory mini camps and activities is not leading. Dan Orlovsky, our quarterback here. Dan, good to have you with us. I don't even want to do the pleasantries. I just want to dive right into this. So, Dan, do you agree with Shannon, or do you think it's too much is being made of Rodgers missing a mandatory minicamp?
Completely disagree. Too much being made of him missing the mandatory minicamp. There's some truth to the things that Shannon said, and agree on some of that. But the reality is this. The way that it was communicated to the public by Robert Saleh was a much bigger deal than Aaron actually missing that minicamp. There's 3 things that are the most paramount part of this conversation. Number 1, this is Super Bowl or bust for Aaron with the New York Jets. Maybe not just this season, but his tenure there. Number 2, it is a legacy-changing tenure with the Jets. He either goes into the conversation of all-time great or all-time talent. Number 3, if healthy, the Jets can absolutely win the Super Bowl this year. But to sit here and say that we're going to make a big deal about Aaron Rodgers not going to the camp is completely outrageous. If the Jets struggle to start this season and Aaron struggles, this will be a talking point. If he doesn't, if he plays the way that Aaron does, and this team plays at a high level to start this season, this will be completely forgotten about. The only reason that this would be a conversation is if they struggle. The reasons why the Jets might not be good this year: number 1, they can't stay healthy. Number 2, their offensive line falls apart. Number 3, their offensive coordinator is not created enough on offense. Number 4, their defense can't stop the run. Way down on the potential list is Aaron Rodgers not being there for mandatory minicamp after he was there for the whole offseason. We're making way too big a deal about this.
Let me ask you a question. What about guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and all those other historically great players? Now, Stephen A. read something yesterday. He said Aaron Rodgers gave out all these things. We need to be all in or all out. We need to make it about the team. So I thought, because I find it funny. Don't you find it funny, Dio? You study the quarterback position, where the Green Bay Packers have had 30 years of prosperity at the quarterback position, 7 MVPs, and they won 2 Super Bowls. You don't think that's ironic? Do you remember other players coming out and saying how Aaron Rodgers was as a leader and how he was in the locker room? Do you remember anybody saying anything about that? Yes or no? It's a simple yes or no.
Yes. Shannon, okay, 1, just the way you asked me, have you heard people say things about Aaron when it comes to his teammate and leadership elements of the past? Have you also heard the contrary, that guys have raved about him as a teammate, specifically since he's been with the Jets? Yes or no?
Been with the Jets? He played 4 snaps. What was he supposed to do?
Yes or no question. Have we heard guys rave about him? Okay,
I have.
Number 2.
I've also heard that he was standoffish with the backup. But go ahead. To your point, yes.
With the backup quarter. Okay, number 2. You rattled off the perimeter players that benefited from the quarterback play. When you were in Denver, who was your quarterback?
Elway.
Would you think it's fair to say that you, a Hall of Famer, elevated John Elway's play to a certain level?
Did I? Yes. No, I think the biggest thing for him is that for me, that even when I was a fledgling, he didn't beat my confidence.
Sure.
Even when I made mistakes.
But you were a great player. You're a Hall of Fame player. So
I developed into that. I didn't come into the league as that.
Absolutely, but my point is this. You rattled off all those guys, and some of those, I mean, Devontae's going to likely be a Hall of Famer, or certainly in that conversation. So those guys, while individually great, were in part because the quarterback was great, and the quarterback became great in part because those guys were great players. It's connected.
Shouldn't you, if you get 30 years of prosperity, 30 years, think about that. You tell me the other time in the history of the NFL, you've seen one team have that longevity of prosperity at the quarterback position, and all they got to show for it.
Were the Indianapolis Colts consistently great with Peyton Manning at quarterback?
Yeah, they went to 2 Super Bowls.
Once,
yeah.
But they won one.
They
with Peyton at quarterback. You know far better than I did a lot of losing in the NFL. It is so hard to win a Super Bowl in that league, is in my imagination. So to sit here and say, they also got railroaded. They got railroaded twice in the playoffs by San Francisco, not because of the quarterback play.
The thing is, Dio, you know this. As the de facto leader, the quarterback has to be there for a mandatory. He has to be. It's a must. And what reasons besides he didn't want to be did he give?
I don't know the reason why he wasn't there. I think that if Shannon, we're harping way too much on a singular word. Mandatory. If that was deemed team minicamp, if that was deemed voluntary minicamp, there would not be a conversation being had about this.
There's a reason why, yes, voluntary, mandatory. That's what it's supposed to be.
The only reason it's called mandatory is to make sure that everybody shows up at some point in the offseason.
So is he not part of everybody?
At some point. Shannon, come on.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that, Dio. I get it. You want to support these quarterbacks, but you know in this situation it was wrong. He's supposed to be there. He's got to be the leader.
But he's not going to be the reason they lose. Whether right or wrong,
he's not going to be the reason why. But hold on. He's not going to be the reason they lose, but he'll damn sure be the reason they win. Is that what you're telling me?
Okay, Shannon, let me take it from here. Dan Orlovsky, this might be one of the most ignorant statements that you've ever made. You are completely lost beyond reason. Like, listen, I am not with Shannon with the overall soliloquy or diatribe he echoed yesterday, because I believe that Aaron Rodgers is a bad man. I love this brother. I mean, he's spectacular. Not to say that Shannon Sharpe did not recognize that, but he took this incident and then he brought up a whole bunch of a whole trail of crumbs involving the career of Aaron Rodgers that I don't particularly hold on to. And I think if you're a Jets fan, as long as this brother shows up, once game one starts and he's healthy, he's ready to go, you good with it because the Jets are so desperate to win. I get that part. But when it comes to you, Dan Orlovsky, you should be ashamed of yourself. First of all, you just uttered the word, the only thing we're talking about is mandatory. If we weren't talking about mandatory, this wouldn't matter. Well, damn it, the word mandatory is in the sentence for a reason.
Matters.
Okay, there's an obligation. No. Did I let you speak? I didn't say a word. Sit there and zip it. Take it. The fact of the matter is, Dan Orlovsky, the word mandatory is there for a reason. And if you don't show up for something that's mandatory, you didn't fulfill a quote-unquote obligation, which is another word in the dictionary. It's there for a reason. You can't sit up there and just say, voluntary, mandatory, that's all we're talking about here. Well, then, damn it, that's a big difference. Words matter. Definitions matter. Responsibility is another word that matters. Accountability is another word. It matters, okay? So that's number one. Number two, here's where Shannon has you dead to rights. And Dan Orlovsky, not even you, with your brilliant soliloquies and your overprotective nature when it comes to quarterbacks and all this other stuff, even you can't refute what I'm about to tell you. Shannon alluded to a quote that Aaron Rodgers gave. Well, I'm going to read that quote to you just like I read it to Shannon yesterday. Here is the quote. It's not a half the time thing. It's not a sometimes thing. It's not a most of the time thing. It's an every time thing. If you want to be a winning organization and put yourself in position to win championships and be competitive, everything that you do matters. And the bleep that has nothing to do with winning needs to get out of the building. So that will be the focus moving forward. End quote. That's what he said before he turned around and missed the mandatory meeting. Now, what I'm saying to you is you can't ignore his words and what he said they mean and then his willingness to violate what he said needed to be enforced within the organization he presides over.
Hey, Dan, before you jump in, can I just say something here? Because I thought this was really strong by Shannon when he said this yesterday. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've been on the show a long time. And I feel like a lot of people are afraid to speak sometimes the truth on superstar quarterbacks. And you could tell Shannon spoke from facts, spoke from his heart. I think we're focusing on the mini camp, but that's not real. It's just like the microcosm. That's not what this is really about. I think it's about Aaron Rodgers' career and certain decisions he's made, things he said, and then the behavior hasn't lined up. So some of the other points that Shannon made, and I know you said that you agreed with, that are holding him back from not having more championships when we know he has the talent to do so. So to that you say what? The bigger issue of him as a leader in certain accountabilities and just how he's conducted himself.
Yeah, the expectations breed all of this, Molly. I agree with some of the things Shannon said.
What do you agree with? Tell me what you agree with, what Shannon said.
You've heard stuff from the past of that he was indifferent to teammates, that he was standoffish to teammates. Whether that's actual or not, I haven't shared a locker room with Aaron. I went into the NFL with Aaron. Was he a different person from when we got drafted? I was in Detroit. He was in Green Bay. We had the same football agent. We went to the Elite 11 camp together. He definitely was a different person throughout the length of his career than he was early on. But I can't completely vouch to some of the things that were said in those locker rooms. Just like you hear the bad stuff, you also have heard, ever since he's gone to New York, a ton of the good stuff. But I do think it's fair to say, yes, that while he is an all-time talent, he's not elevated into that all-time great. I don't disagree with that. But to sit here and say about the mini camp or whatnot, Molly, if Aaron Rodgers didn't have the ending of his career that he did in Green Bay and go to the New York Jets in the fashion that he did with these expectations of, hey, Super Bowl contender. I was on live TV when Shefty broke the story with NFL Live when it came to Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay. It started then when it comes to the expectation.
Dan, what I'm saying to you, it's the mini camp isn't an isolated incident. If everything else hadn't happened, it was just the mini camp. Yeah, I'm sure Shannon's a Hall of Famer. Look at him. Shannon's a Hall of Famer.
Molly?
He's in ridiculous shape. He looks like a 25-year-old. So he's got a different, consistency and work ethic. No, I'm just saying, but it's the truth.
I said, Dan, just admit you're wrong, Dan.
No, but
Molly's
Dan,
right, Shannon's
what I'm
right.
saying,
You're wrong,
it's not
Dan.
even about the mini camp. It's about everything encompassing. And this was just another example.
But okay, one, in comparison who? Tom? Sure. Or Peyton, sure. Two of the 3, 4, 5 greatest. Okay, but Aaron isn't the all-time great when it comes to that because he hasn't won.
Could have been. He can control that.
But
That's
Molly,
what we're saying. You can control these things.
Okay, Molly, two things. One, they got railroaded in the playoffs for San Francisco twice. Aaron missed that throw down the field. That's the only moment. Number two, I don't get into a lot of the stuff that Aaron says about off the field stuff, politics, and I'm not with that. I'm just talking about on the field and performance and attachment to quarterback play. I'm not going to get into the stuff that Aaron has voiced his opinions about. That is not my world.